Hi, everybody. This is Elenbaas from Nightlight Astrology, and these are your Sun and Rising Sign horoscopes for July of 2019. So this is the Sun and Rising Sign horoscope for Taurus. I am on the road right now. I'm hanging out in my mom's basement in Michigan, so I'm not in my office. So you probably are not used to seeing me with this background. All right, so we're going to take a look at Taurus for the month of July. We put it up on the screen so that you can see it. Big month. There's two eclipses. We're going to be looking at both of those eclipses in your chart. That's main topic for everybody in this month's horoscopes. What are these eclipses doing? So the month gets started, pretty much right off the bat. You've got the eclipses coming in on the 2nd of July. We've got you've got the solar eclipse in Cancer that's falling in your third house, right down here. And the third house traditionally was a house that had to do with the customs, rules, traditions, obligations, and karma that surrounds your immediate environment, your family, your friends, your siblings, your neighborhood, kind of your tribe or your village. The third house, I like to think of it as sort of village consciousness. So sometimes what that means is there'll be a heavy theme about friends or people that live around you or your siblings or your immediate environment and changes happening therein. It can also be that there are a lot of changes coming through with solar eclipses in the third house will involve living someplace new, acclimating oneself to a different community or a different kind of everyday environment, a different commute to work, a different daily rhythm. But it can also, the third house has a lot to do with communication and the mind. And so also just a general transformation of your mindset, of how you're perceiving reality. Sometimes it'll involve learning something new, the study of a new subject or a new topic, things related to education or technology. So those are all possibilities too that could be really, those topics could become really pronounced due to the solar eclipse in the third house. Anything involving your siblings could be really pronounced as well. The other thing to think about is the solar eclipse. For you, we're talking about the sun as the natural ruler of your fourth house of home, property, and parents. This is also an eclipse happening in Cancer, the moon, which is also related to the same topics, basically. So, we're thinking right now for Tauruses that things around family, things around your family sphere of life, your home and your property may be a really big deal. We're going to see that repeated in a few ways this month in other transits as well. For example, when we go along to about July 8th into the 9th, at that point you're going to see Mercury and Mars getting together in the early degrees of Leo, just as Mercury is turning retrograde, and both are making a square to Uranus and Taurus in your first house. This feels like a new beginning that at the same time will have to do with maybe some kind of changes, revisioning, maybe even remodeling in the home or in relation to your parents or your family members. It also has the feeling of some healthy individuation or some healthy degree of separation and independence from maybe some unhealthy or potentially toxic patterns with your family or your hometown or your home, your past in some way. The fourth house is related not only to our home and family and property, but also to sort of ancestral roots or things that exist in the past. And Uranus in the first for Tauruses right now, Taurus rising. So there's a huge focus on kind of your whole life revolutionizing. For Taurus, because you're a fixed sign, that means deeper patterns, are being unearthed, kind of upended. It's more difficult right now in some ways for Tauruses with Uranus in your house, because Uranus really likes to disrupt things, shake up the status quo, and it's going to do so in ways that are, because you're a fixed sign, it's going to do so in ways that tend to disturb your need for security, peace, simplicity, control, etc. And this, in particular, this month may really focus in on home family property issues or things from the past. So that energy comes in as Mercury turns retrograde with Mars. Watch out for conflicts, hot-headedness, big egos, protectiveness or defensiveness, issues around fathers and pride and verbal conflicts or feeling overly defensive because of big egos, stuff like that. You have to be really careful of that with Mercury and Mars in Leo. Then in general, between like the 10th and the 15th of the month, you're going to see the sun go through oppositions to Saturn and Pluto in the ninth house. And this suddenly now brings in this third house, ninth house dynamic, which is then accentuated with a lunar eclipse that's taking place in the ninth house on July 16th. Now, the ninth house is a place basically that in ancient astrology pertained to the laws of civilization, the laws and lawmakers, whether that was the king or the senators, or if that's also the interest in the laws of the universe, whether you're a physicist, or a mystic. The ninth house is always about your pursuit of truth and understanding the higher codes and principles that govern life in the city, life in the cosmos, whatever. Now, with Saturn and Pluto up there and a lunar eclipse happening up there, there might be something of a crisis or contraction of your faith, of your beliefs. Your beliefs, your mind is changing right now. Your paradigm structures, the way you view and interact with reality, or your process of learning something or studying something. There are, more of an intense transformational energy placed in that place of the higher mind and faith. Also, the ninth house is related to long journeys, so it's possible that that could play a role somehow, some kind of travel or something like that. But the sun's opposition and then Venus's opposition between the 17th and the 21st altogether also keep bringing up the difference between, say, family and emotional obligations and loyalties, and your concern for things that are more everyday, everyday life in the village, life in the valley, versus maybe some of the bigger, heavier questions, or the higher purpose for your sense of being here. When you feel like you have this higher calling, but you also have everyday, responsibilities and heartstrings that you're attached to. How do those things get along? How do you follow a sense of calling in the world that may at times be at odds with your emotional commitments in everyday life? So those kinds of things might be a little bit more acute right now. Finally, after that whole sequence from the 10th really through the 21st, with the lunar eclipse falling in the ninth house on the 16th, the last major transit of the month is going to be on the 31st. There's another new moon on the 31st, and that new moon is falling in the sign of Leo. And that new moon will also, right down here at the bottom of the chart on the 31st, we're going to see that one conjoin with Venus. Mars is in the same sign, big stellium in Leo, and all of it's making a square again to Uranus in Taurus. The same thing coming up again. We have major changes happening for you as you're individuating personally, big kind of revolutionary questions about identity, becoming more of yourself, kind of finding more autonomy and agency, but also, looking at those questions of individual growth in relation to things happening at home, literally with your property or with your family dynamics, with your parents, with family karma, with things from the past, and with questions about what are my roots, what supports me in the most foundational level. The whole moon cycle ahead, starting on the 31st, says these themes are going to be a really big deal this coming into basically the last month of the summer. So at any rate, that's what the month holds for you, Taurus. I hope that this was interesting and helpful for you, give you some insight for the month ahead. Let me know how things go. Leave me some comments. And like I said, I'm on the road right now, but I'll be probably giving a talk or two this week on the solar eclipse, give you a little bit more to think about with that. And then we definitely be back for the lunar eclipse later in the month as well. Okay, take care. Bye.